This is the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. Released in late 2014, it represented what many would consider the end of an era for Samsung. A sort of golden age, where Samsung was still putting user choice and accessibility options like swappable batteries and expandable storage above all else, making the Note 4 for many years onwards still a very popular device among the Samsung faithful. The Galaxy S5 from earlier in the same year likewise was the final Galaxy S model to really push that classic Samsung mentality, and the Note 4 took everything that phone got right and dialed it up to 11. Not only did we have the same features that already made the Note series so appealing to its users, the large phablet display, the included stylus, but we also had what was to this point Samsung's most premium design by far, with an actual aluminum frame that made the phone feel solid and luxurious in the hand, complemented by the admittedly slightly less luxurious faux leather plastic backing. This phone was really the ultimate Samsung Galaxy device in 2014, and even using it over a decade later, it still doesn't feel that obsolete. Though, running Android 6 Marshmallow and Samsung's old TouchWiz interface, I wouldn't exactly consider it a pleasant experience anymore. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at my dad's old phone, one he had for a few years before eventually upgrading to an iPhone X. How does the Samsung Galaxy Note 4 hold up all these years later?
Is that the new Galaxy Note 4?
Yep.
Smooth intro, man. And yes, that is the Note 4, with the best screen we've ever put in a phone.
You guys think I should start McCoy?
It's great for multitasking so you can get to all that important stuff, like this. And this.
What are you doing?
Figuring out our costumes for the office party.
Wait, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you are.
And with the S Pen, you can turn handwriting into text, dad into mustache dad, and bagels into pizza bagels.
Pizza bagels.
I literally just said that. With optical image stabilization, you can go into the harshest situations and still get the shot.
That's incredible.
Frameable. Gorgeous.
Well, it's 8x zoom, so it's 8 times as gorgeous. And a super wide lens so you can selfie with, like, everyone.
Yeah, you gotta give me your number, though.
The best big screen phone just got even better. Introducing the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. The next big thing is here.
First, let's talk about the design, and specifically that faux leather plastic backing, because I don't know how I feel about it. This was a design element also on the Note 3, albeit the Note 4 I think does it much better. I don't like the unnecessary stitching on the 3, and it being removed gives the phone a much cleaner look. The Note 3 was also entirely plastic, in classic Samsung fashion, with a plastic frame that was painted to make it look metallic, which is something I always hated about old Galaxy phones. Yeah, it kinda looked nice. The Samsung Galaxy S5, for example, with its fully plastic frame honestly does look pretty good. I like how the chrome contrasts with the rest of the design, and the dimpled textured back is plastic, sure, but a little bit more premium looking than the glossier plastic of the S4 and the S3. But still, that frame, it's fully plastic, and you can tell as soon as you pick up the phone. It feels cheap because it is cheap, and this was always probably the easiest thing to complain about when it came to these older Samsung devices back in the day. They always had the most vibrant, gorgeous AMOLED screens, as well as what many used to consider essential features like microSD card slots, but then it was wrapped up in this plastic, cheap feeling package, if not cheap looking. While this wouldn't bother everyone, the designs of these phones just weren't in the same league as something like Apple's aluminum and glass iPhones of the era. It was 2015 when Samsung would finally pivot to making more premium designs a core tenet of their smartphones moving forward. The Galaxy S6 Edge in particular I think is probably one of the most gorgeous smartphones ever made by anyone, and it did a lot right, including bringing in a glass backing years before most other phones, along with that really nice aluminum frame. While this all would elevate Samsung to the same level as iPhone, this new era also brought some major concessions. The Note 5 would also bring a unibody metal frame and glass back, but also similar to the S6, it would remove many of the features once considered a staple of Samsung Galaxy phones. There was no expandable storage and no interchangeable battery whatsoever. Heck, there was only 32 and 64GB models, no 128, which was an odd choice for a 2015 smartphone without a microSD card slot. 64 gigs was probably enough space, but what if it wasn't? Well, you're stuck. The Note 4 only came with 32 gigs, but it could be upgraded easily and cheaply. The Galaxy S7 would thankfully bring back expandable memory, as would the Note 7. There was no Note 6, by the way. Samsung skipped it in order to reduce confusion between their phones, which I think makes sense. If you were considering either the Note 4 or the Galaxy S5 in 2014, it would be easy to think the S5 was newer, even though it's actually older, bigger number. In any case, while the Note 7 was really highly regarded by reviewers, it had some other issues, some explosive tendencies that we really don't need to rehash here. The Galaxy Note 4 would be the last Samsung flagship to have a removable battery, and that makes it, in my opinion, the final classic Samsung Galaxy phone. It was a feature that was always so prominently marketed, and yet only months after the Note 4, there was a distinct shift in how Samsung would operate, aiming more to compete with iPhone directly, rather than simply being the anti-iPhone and cramming in everything Apple refused to. Which version of Samsung you preferred was obviously subjective, but there was a significant portion of their user base that felt ostracized, particularly by the Galaxy S6 and Note 5's removal of options. The S7 would help a lot in restoring faith, but there's no question that the Note 4 is a remnant of a bygone era, one that's now long gone. Alright, I got a little off track there, but the design. Specifically, we have this plastic fake leather backing. It's both nice and awful at the same time. First, biggest issue, it seems to suffer the fate of too many old plastic smartphones. It's melted a bit over the years, and my dad's original phone backing here is now sticky to the touch, making it a real pain to hold or use. It's not as if I've stored this thing in a warm environment. It's mainly sat in a bin with a bunch of phones in the closet of my studio, so basically room temperature. Doesn't speak well to the longevity of these things. But, thankfully, because the back is so easy to pop off, it's also extremely easy to replace, and I got a replacement back even today off Amazon for like 12 bucks. They're still around. I'm sure it's not OEM or anything, but it's identical as far as I can tell, and instantly it helps revive this phone, bringing it back to its former glory. Because as much as I'm not huge on faking anything, I don't hate this faux leather material. It feels fairly premium, even though I know it's not, and it is comfortable in the hand. The texture, it's just nice. It's interesting to me comparing it to the LG G4, a 2015 phone I reviewed a little while back that features a genuine leather backing. And holding both phones, I think the Galaxy Note 4 honestly feels better in the hand. I think I just don't really like the stitching in the middle of the G4, it feels a little awkward to me. If I had to choose one or the other, I probably would take the genuine leather backing if only for the novelty, but I really don't mind what Samsung did here on the Note 4. A little silly, sure maybe, but it feels good, and that aluminum frame really does wonders to enhance the design. I can't emphasize enough just how important it is to me to see real metal on a Galaxy like this. It feels so much better than the Galaxy S5. It's got real weight to it, real substance. It doesn't feel like just a toy that could be snapped in half with minimal effort. I also like how they colored the frame. It's black along the sides, but it has those shiny edges to make this really unique premium look that is in no way overbearing. If the whole thing was chrome like the S5, it might feel like a little too much, but no, it's a lot more subtle. I like it. We've got a headphone jack on the top of the phone, very nice to see, and the S Pen along with the micro USB charging port on the bottom. Samsung wouldn't bring USB-C until the Note 7, but this was still very much the standard in 2014, so it's fine. This phone brought fast charging, which was really convenient, and you could purchase a wireless charging rear cover for Qi charging capabilities if you desired that as well. Not only is that battery swappable, but it also was pretty big at 3,220 milliamp hours, a nice benefit of the large size, so when it came to power performance, it was pretty tough to beat the Note 4. This thing was kind of a beast. There is a minimal camera bump around that classic centered square lens, and the metallic Samsung logo looks really nice. This is probably one of my all-time favorite Samsung Galaxy designs as a whole, at least when it comes to anything they made before the Galaxy S6. It looks good, and it feels even better in the hand. I would have liked to see water resistance here, given the S5 brought it, but the S6 didn't have it either, so it's difficult to complain too much. Just don't ask me how I found out the S6 isn't water resistant. Of course, there were multiple color options. You could purchase the Note 4 in black, white, gold, and apparently pink for some reason. Yeah, interesting choice there, but this was a year before Apple brought rose gold with the iPhone 6s, so maybe Samsung was onto something here. The gold really looks off to me as well, honestly. I feel like it just doesn't work without a glass or aluminum backing. Maybe it looks better in person, but at least we've got a little variety, and I do really like the black one my dad chose back in the day, upgrading from his yellow iPhone 5C, actually. Certainly a lot less colorful. He wanted a larger phone, and this device certainly qualified as just that. We're looking at a sharp and vivid 5.7-inch 1440p Super AMOLED panel with a very high pixel density of 518 pixels per inch. This screen is still gorgeous and is held up incredibly well, even if it does appear perhaps overly saturated depending on your taste, but you can adjust that a bit in settings. Compared to other phones of the era, particularly non-AMOLED devices like iPhones, the Note 4 would have immediately popped out from the crowd, and the resolution being this high, it looks so good. Of course, with OLED, burn-in can certainly be an issue if you leave a static image on the screen for too long, but if you're careful, you hopefully will never have any issues. The bezels surrounding the screen feel relatively slim for the time. Shout out to the Note Edge, which was released just after the Note 4 and was basically the same phone, but, well, with an edge. It was edgy. Okay, cool precursor to the Galaxy S6 Edge, but anyways, back to the Note 4. We've still got Samsung's classic wide physical home button, which does feature a fingerprint reader. Like the Galaxy S5, it requires you to swipe the sensor, and also like the S5, it's absolutely awful. Seriously, Seriously, I'd rather just put in a pin, I think, than struggling to use this every time I want to unlock my phone. This home button shape might be convenient in order to keep the bezels slim, but it just doesn't work for a fingerprint sensor. Plus the swipe sensors were always terrible. This is just laughably bad compared to something like Touch ID on iPhones of the time. If you think I'm being overly harsh, trust me, I'm really not. It's so inconsistent and unreliable. You'd get used to the movement required, and you have to have your thumb just positioned right, and you'd probably get to the point where you could usually get it first try, but it just shouldn't be this cumbersome. We do have the multitask and back buttons that light up and disappear as you use them, and I've always appreciated how Samsung actually utilized the bottom bezel. Too many smartphones used to have digital navigation bars, but these awful large bottom bezels that just felt like a complete waste of space. Sometimes you had dual firing speakers, which helped. The Motorola Nexus 6 released around the same time as the Note 4, and it also had a very slim bottom bezel, which was cool. But then you have phones like the first Pixel, which is my favorite example of wasting space that could otherwise be useful. So props to Samsung for not doing that. All in all, the design, in combination with the gorgeous phablet display, might just be the best element of this smartphone. While you can nitpick the plastic backing, the phone still looks and feels great, and the device easily holds its own with the other major flagships of the time, like the iPhone 6 Plus and Nexus 6. The size is also just kind of ideal for a phablet like this. I just recently reviewed the Nexus 6, and that phone, it's too big, being significantly wider than even my iPhone 15 Pro Max, which makes it really uncomfortable to use unless you have, well, very large hands. The Note 4, in contrast, feels just right at 5.7 inches, and it feels big without being too much. Samsung really nailed the look of this phone front to back, and it's no wonder the Note 4 would be remembered by many as the peak of Samsung design. Let's turn to the hardware, which in typical Samsung fashion involves multiple different models in order to make my reviews of these old phones needlessly complicated. Insert that chart from Wikipedia going through all those Galaxy S3 models here. Yes, this is real, and yes, it's stupid. Anyways, thankfully the Note 4 for the most part isn't that bad. We basically have two main variants dependent on region. There was the Note 4 with Samsung's own Exynos 7 Octa 5433 chip, and then the Note 4 I have here has Qualcomm's Snapdragon 805 chip, which was pretty standard for flagship Androids of this era. As per usual, there were some pros and cons to either processor, like the Exynos was actually 64-bit, whereas the 805 was still 32, but stuff like this, along with some benchmark differences, really wouldn't have impacted the end-user experience very much, if at all, and performance was going to be solid whichever device you had. At least performance would have been solid a decade ago, maybe not so much today. We've got 3 GB of RAM, which, again, pretty standard. These are the same specs that were in the Nexus 6. Shipping with Android 4.4.4 KitKat, the Note 4 would get 2 years of software support up to Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow, which is what I'm running here. TouchWiz saw some minor UI updates, and to quote the Wikipedia article for clarity, however, the UI is still very similar to the previous UI and slightly similar to the S6 UI, but most of the TouchWiz UI resembles the original UI for the Note 4. UI, I don't know, I just found this to be kind of a funny sentence, even though I think it sort of mostly makes sense, UI. Anyways, yes, it's a little bit different from how it originally shipped. As for actual performance, I found the software ran pretty well when it came to basic tasks and navigating the interface. It's when you turn to anything more intensive that you probably could easily quickly experience slowdown, just given the age of the device and the limited hardware of the time. You certainly wouldn't want to use a phone this old anymore, nor software this old. It feels its age, but custom ROMs are very much a thing here, if that's something that might appeal to you, and the community, at least on the XDA forums, doesn't appear to be completely dead, so that's pretty nice to see, honestly. For a phone this old, like, that's impressive. Probably no real reason to go out of your way to install Lineage OS or the like for a more modern version of Android, but it is nice to know you have that option. But turning back to the stock experience, we naturally had a bunch of built-in features, because what was a Samsung Galaxy without some excessive and unnecessary bloat? Now let's be fair here, a lot of these features were genuinely useful or cool. The multi-window stuff was pretty ahead of its time, and there's a heart rate monitor I can remember my dad actually using back in the day, but then you've also got stuff like a built-in ultraviolet ray measurement sensor. Wait, what? Why? As far as I can tell, this is the only smartphone to ever include a UV ray sensor, and for the life of me, I don't know what the purpose is. I mean, I know what the purpose is. It's to measure solar radiation and tell you whether or not you need sunscreen. Did anyone ever actually need to use this? Like, is the sun out? Are you going to be in the sun? Then yeah, maybe wear sunscreen. Like, okay, well, I tried it and it does seem to work. So yeah, I can't imagine why they got rid of this feature. If there's another phone that has a UV ray sensor that any of you know about, please let me know in the comments, because I couldn't find any. It's just a really odd inclusion, but I kind of respect it for how out there it is. Why not, I guess, right? Anyways, of course, the most important gimmick with the Galaxy Note 4 has to be, well, the actual note part of things. This is the S Pen stylus, which itself is a cool little piece of tech. You can easily slide it out of its slot on the bottom of the phone, which triggers a sound effect, and oh, the sounds of this phone, I tell you, they bring back so much PTSD. That whistle is ingrained into my brain to this day. Okay, sorry, getting off track again. S Pen. It's very light and very thin, quite comfortable to use. Plus, I like the design with the chrome plastic on top and the black grippy plastic you hold onto. There's a button here which is linked to these air commands, so long as the pen is hovering over the phone. You can also click it and use it for easily highlighting text, which is cool. The only issue I found is that I did accidentally press the button here and there if I was gripping the pen too tightly, but that is just purely user error. I like how the phone is able to sense the pen hovering over it, and it shows that little dot to show you it recognizes the pen is there. This does allow for some admittedly very unnecessary features like previewing an image by hovering over it. Probably nothing anybody would ever use, but some neat functionality all the same. We'll be looking at the camera shortly here, but yes, that is me from 4 years ago, the last time I reviewed this phone. I was 21 back then. Man, I was so young and so naive and so unaware there was an ultraviolet ray sensor built into the Note 4. Seriously, I never mentioned it in my old video. Clearly, I was not very thorough back then, because I don't know what else I would talk about. It's the most interesting feature on this phone, without any question. Except for, of course, the S Pen. We have this S Note app, which, as you might expect, allows us to easily make memos with our S Pen, and it feels pretty great. It does work best, I think, if you're actually holding the phone in your hand, laying it flat on a surface like your desk, and there's a bit of a wobble when you near the edges, which I could see very quickly being irritating. The pen is really accurate and pressure sensitive, and it's just really great. The Note series always had easily the best built-in styluses on the market, and the Note 4 is no exception. This isn't going to feel maybe as good as like an Apple Pencil or something, but you can't even use an Apple Pencil on an iPhone, so there's really no comparison. Plus, the stylus doesn't need a battery, and it's got Wacom's Tech, a company that is dedicated to making drawing tablets, so you know it's good, and you can just slide it into the phone when not in use. While the pen is small enough that you could feasibly lose it if you dropped it while out and about, having that slot makes it pretty unlikely, and it won't fall out of there on its own. Back in the day, I was always a skeptic when it came to these phone styluses, and I'll be honest, I really still don't see them as particularly practical. There just aren't too many scenarios where I can see myself actually pulling out the pen to use it. But still, I can't deny the simplicity and the ease of use the S Pen brings. It's from 2014, but it still feels fantastic today, and there's a reason there were so many dedicated Note users. If you wanted a phone with a stylus, there was literally no better option on the market than the Galaxy Note 4 in 2014 to 2015. Let's turn to the cameras, always one of the most important aspects of any smartphone, whether old or new. What you'll find with the Note 4 is that there's a lot of impressive sounding numbers, but the results don't really live up to the hype. They're mainly just, you know, typical for a 2014 flagship phone. On the rear, we have a single 16 megapixel optically stabilized camera sensor that was capable of recording video in up to 4K at 30 frames per second. Again, you've got that slight camera bump, which is nothing crazy, especially compared to everything we're used to today. On the front, we have a 3.7 megapixel selfie camera, which is apparently capable of recording video in up to 1440p at 30 frames per second. Selfies are fine, probably on the higher end of average for 2014. As for the 1440p video, I mean, look, this might be technically 1440p, but we're still looking at only 3.7 megapixels. My 21-year-old self didn't seem particularly impressed, and I'm inclined to agree with him. This was the first front camera in any phone that could record video at 1440p, which just screams of some easy marketing nonsense for Samsung. Overall, selfie camera, it's good. For 2014, it's not good by today's standards at all. Turning to that rear sensor and away from my face, thankfully, this is where things get a bit more interesting. 16 megapixels sounds pretty good, and it's the same as what the S5 had, but like the S5, the actual results are quite standard for the time, and not significantly better or worse than something like the 8 megapixels the 2014 iPhone 6 had. In good lighting conditions, ideally outdoors during the day, you can capture some really nice images. You might want to take a few photos at a time to make sure one does turn out, but I was pretty happy with a good few of these pictures. It doesn't handle motion great, like my dog running around. This was 4 years ago, she was still a puppy back then, but you can only set your expectations so high with a phone this old. Of course, it's when you go indoors or into any lower light situation that the age really rears its ugly head. Though these images aren't abhorrent by any means, just very typical for a smartphone of the era. They're noisy, they're grainy, but again with better lighting, the Note 4 was fully able to capture moments and memories, even if the pictures aren't as sharp or as well exposed as a phone today can capture. here. The 4K 30 video is plenty decent, and the combination of optical and digital image stabilization is helpful here. This was one of the more important additions that was hitting smartphones around this time for sure. All in all, the cameras here are solid. I'd say it's very similar to the quality of the Nexus 6 we reviewed recently. Nothing mind-blowing, but definitely one of the best smartphone cameras in 2014 to be sure, and it's hard to ask for much more than that. Both the appeal and also problem with these old Samsung phones is that having the sheer quantity of options and features included could be at times genuinely beneficial, but more often than not could also bog down the overall experience and lead to needless complexity and confusion for their users. Sometimes you might get a shockingly great S Pen that was perfect for those it appealed to, and then sometimes you would end up with an ultraviolet ray sensor. I wouldn't say that the Galaxy phones that Samsung made of this era represented the best of what smartphones in general had to offer, but I would instead argue that they represented everything smartphones had to offer. What's good here is really, really good. That 1440p AMOLED display is just gorgeous and far better than what Apple was offering at the time. But then a lot of what's bad is really, really bad, like that fingerprint sensor. And then the rest of it, most of it, it's anywhere from annoyingly mediocre, like the TouchWiz UI, to pretty good, like the cameras. Even the actual build of the Galaxy Note 4 feels contradictory, with this blend of premium aluminum clashing with a cheap plastic fake leather backing. The Note 4 is both the final and quite frankly probably the best classic Samsung Galaxy flagship to ever release. After the Galaxy S6, things would never be the same. And while we could debate the pros and cons of Samsung's direction over the past decade, I'd rather just admire what a beast this smartphone was and really still is. The Note 4 is not particularly usable today, not really. It's old, obsolete, unsupported, and it wouldn't provide a very fun experience anymore. While it's fine for taking notes with the S Pen, it's actually pretty great for that, there's just no reason not to use a newer smartphone, though you could always pick up one of these for under $50 on eBay if you really wanted to. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4 is a bit of an odd duck, but an iconic piece of Samsung's history and a phone I think is worth remembering from an era I know is worth remembering. They just don't make phones like they used to, and in this current modern world of glass, titanium, and aluminum smartphones that all seemingly look the same every single year, I don't know, I find it hard not to feel nostalgic for a time where a phone with a fake leather backing didn't even really feel out of place. It was normal. And in any case, I'm glad we got a chance to take a look at the Note 4 today. And so with that, I think I'm right about done here. Did any of you ever use the Note 4? What do you think of the phone? How do you feel about the classic era of Galaxy phones versus what we have today? Make sure you let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. I've been having fun lately going through some older Samsungs. I don't currently own any more Note phones at the moment that I remember anyways, but depending on how this video does, maybe I'll have to get some. Again, maybe smash that like button if that's something you want to see. In the meantime, we do have a Discord community if you'd like to come by and say hi. Would love to see you over there. Huge shout out to the channel members for being the absolute best. Thank you guys so much for your support. And thank you all for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.